Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to get more out of life without sacrificing what matters most, then do we have the Do Less show for you. Today I'll be talking with Kate Northrup, entrepreneur, best-selling author, mother, and the author of a brilliant must-read book on reclaiming your time and your life, Do Less. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about a revolutionary approach to time and energy management, not just for busy moms. That, plus we'll talk about Kettle brand sea salt potato chips. Gotcha. Hockey pucks and tires, schooners in college, drawing circles and Rain Man, the importance of egg it on, pie man miyake shojin ramen noodles, and what in the world light wash jeans, suede Birkenstocks, and a tan Patagonia fleece have to do with anything. Awesome. So welcome to the show, Kate. Are you ready to shine?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have you here on the show. Absolutely love your book. Before we dive right into things, would you mind sharing who your mom is and in context, what were you learning in your earliest years about yourself and about your body?
Yeah, my mom is Christiane Northrup, MD. She wrote the New York Times bestseller, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, among others. And growing up, I was taught about the wisdom of my body as a young woman. I was sometimes not that interested in learning about that. The thing is, it's tricky to learn things sometimes from our parents.
Yeah.
You know, I meet people all the time and say, oh my gosh, it must have been so incredible to be raised, with the Christiane Northrup as a mother. And I mean, yes, in certain ways, but like our parents are our parents. And so I wasn't 100% ready for that message. And I also will say my mom was not living at a time and in her career, she was not in a chosen career that allowed her to really dive into what she was teaching in a practical way. So there were things that she knew were true that she couldn't practice because she was revolutionizing women's health in the traditional medical field. And the system just didn't support it. It really still doesn't support it in terms of the medical field. So that's kind of the background of, and I'm carrying that torch forward in whatever way I'm doing.
And it's kind of, I don't know, fascinating is the right term, but it sort of like goes to when you had your first period, and maybe you can share about that, but you were seeing both sides of the coin. Here's mom championing the feminine, and at the time having to do it, wearing the pants and doing it the male way. And you're going, WTF.
Yeah, it didn't really line up, to be honest. And that's actually an insightful way to describe it. I think our children, I have two, and people in general, we learn more from watching people do things than we do from hearing them talk about them. And it was a great, and I adore my mother. This is not, bashing her at all. However, the truth is she was not living all of the things that she was teaching because she couldn't. Right. And I have tremendous compassion and gratitude for everything she's done. And so I was following a little bit more of the model that I saw and the model that I felt rather than the words she was saying, which was, I had a lot of grief when I first got my period. Like, I felt like I wasn't ready. I think I honestly, I don't know that I could have ever articulated this at the time, but I think there was just a real sadness about what it means to be a woman in our culture that I could feel at a very young age. And it was not a happy day for me. I was not excited to become a young woman in any shape or form.
From when you talk about grief and the term mourning would have come to mind. So it's right in alignment. The way you've written it, it sounds like there was, I don't know how to put it, a loss of power on that day. All of a sudden, I am now, please forgive me, less than.
Yeah, I would say, interesting. Loss of power would be a way to describe it. I think also a loss of freedom. I'll never forget the first time I've never really talked about this before, but I'll never forget the first time that I was aware of having moved from being a girl to a woman, where I was suddenly aware of the shape of my body and the energy I attracted versus being a little girl. It's a very different moment. And that it's like a shift in power where it felt really scary now, because it can be really scary to be a woman in our culture with the just with like the way people can be and what kind of attention it can garner. And so I think there was some grief about that, like a loss of freedom to just kind of be whoever I wanted to be, or be free to play, or just free from the kind of attention that is put upon women in our culture, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So I live here outside of Aspen, Colorado, and I can go run and play in the hills and not think another thing about it. My wife is like, and she's not a paranoid individual, and she can really take care of herself. She's like, but you just don't get it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put myself out in the mountains by myself. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was walking down the street in New York City yesterday, and I was walking under scaffolding, and there was a line of men. I don't know what they were doing. They were lined up after work, taking a break or something. And it's not something I experience a lot anymore, because I live in a small town in Maine, and I pretty much know everybody. But like, there was this feeling all of a sudden that I had forgotten about, of feeling super aware of my body, feeling aware of whether or not I was safe, wanting to really bring my energy in. And I had forgotten that. And it's a bummer. Like, it's a bummer part of being a woman, I will say.
And Jessica, if she was here on the air, she would say, it's not a bummer part. She would agree with you completely. She'd say, it's the guy's fault. Why can't they just learn to control themselves? Why do we have to change who we are for them?
Right. And that's so true. And I will say, none of the guys that I was walking past did a thing. So it was just based on my past experience and past traumas that I contained myself. Was that necessary? I don't actually know.
Gotcha. So let's fast forward from then. You had an interesting vision at 18 that kind of shaped maybe the next decade or more of how you sculpted your life. What was that vision?
I wanted to create financial freedom for myself by the age of 30, so that I could stay home with my kids one day, and I wouldn't have to work if I didn't want to. The interesting thing about that was, once I had my first daughter, when she was about 5 weeks old, I wanted to work. I wanted to go back to work. And I was surprised by this, because I thought that I didn't think I was going to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, but I was open to the possibility that I may not work until my kids work outside the home for pay. I'll be very clear. Certainly every mother is working, every father is working. But and then I realized, like, motherhood was harder than I thought, and I really love my work. And so that was great, because I opened up to this other possibility and realized, oh, okay, well, I've been preparing for this moment, my adult life. Here I am, and I get to make a different choice than I thought.
So, which is really cool. And from what I understand is, you ended up having to throttle back. It's a choice to throttle back, and things didn't fall apart. They didn't blow up on you.
They did not. I got pregnant, and I was so tired for 9 months. I was taking like 3-hour naps a day, sleeping 10 to 11 hours at night. I just could not get enough sleep, and I couldn't get my energy back. And I'd never had the experience of having something happen to me physically where I couldn't just push harder to get through it, or learn a new skill, or just try harder. Like, there was literally nothing I could do. And so I did cut my work hours about in half. And then the first year of motherhood, Penelope, our first, was pretty sick. So that was a lot of time and energy. She was a terrible sleeper. Some nights she would wake up screaming every 10 minutes. I mean, it was brutal. And we only had 10 hours of childcare a week. And so during that time, again, my work hours were minimized, even probably more than while I was pregnant. And my husband and I did not have maternity leave, paternity leave. There's no parental paid leave in the United States, nationally. And so we needed to get the same results from a lot less work. And what was so amazing to me is, of course, I would have assumed you cut your work hours in half or less, you're going to make less money. But what we found is that the first year after Penelope was born, we had made the same amount of revenue. And so I thought, Well, if we could have made the same amount of revenue working half as much, what the heck was I doing my whole adult life working all these hours?
And my guess is, while I don't know if your nervous system fully relaxed into things, I don't know if anybody's nervous system can relax into year number one. However, you couldn't, no matter, my guess is no matter how much you wanted to strive or push or drive, you couldn't. You had to just sort of like first trimester exhaustion and continuing forward. There ain't nothing you can do about it. You just have to allow, as you talk about with Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, allow into it.
Yeah, there was so much surrender. I learned so much about surrender. I just could not shape my life to my will anymore.
Mhm.
And it was shocking because I am a total recovering control freak. I mean, I love to control things. I mean, who doesn't? And so motherhood, well, pregnancy first and then birth.
Mhm.
And then motherhood
Mhm.
have taught me some very hard lessons about the things I can control and the things I can't control. And I have realized the only thing I can control is sort of my energetic relationship to the things that are happening, not what's actually happening.
So important. So let's go from there. Let's talk about the global evidence for doing less. And you got me thinking about someone kind of in your neck of the woods, Dr. Srini Pillai of Harvard, who has a book, Tinker, Dabble, Doodle, Try, who talks about when we get in the work and get out of the work. The key is those regular breaks that you talk about, that you actually do more, think more clearly, and the ideas chase you down.
So what's so interesting is we have this thought, if I want better results, I have to put in more hours, right? Actually, industrial age, the data does not support this. What the data shows is that we work the best when we, unbelievable, revolutionary, take a break when we have fatigue.
I like it.
Yeah, it's so good. So what they found is that for most people, a chunk of 50 minutes working and then 10 to 15 minutes stepping away is a really beautiful rhythm. And what happens is when we don't do that, when that wave of fatigue comes, we start yawning, we start spacing out, at 45 to 55 minutes. And we ignore it and we push through. What we do is our brain is trying to stimulate itself. So we open a new tab on our browser, we pick up our phone and start scrolling, we start a new task, we text a friend, and then we are completely distracted. It takes us 25 minutes to get back refocused, and we don't get really good work done. Versus if we actually would just take the 10 to 15 minute break, we get more done when we sit back down, and then our body is also replenished. So we get better rest. We get better results from our rest in that 10 to 15 minutes, and we get better results from our work in that 50-minute chunk, and we get more done in less time. So then you have all this other time freed up to do other stuff.
I like it. And as somebody who's recovering on all of this myself, I get it fully. And I do try to work in 50-minute chunks and then take a little time off. What I find is if I try to work straight through, I'm convinced the life force that I'm stealing is literally going to come out of me later in life.
I think that's very wise of you. And I have a theory that if we don't take care of our bodies will take us out eventually. And I've certainly experienced it. We went through a period of time last year where my husband was incredibly ill due to, it's a variety of circumstances, but that was one of them for sure. And there will be a reckoning if we don't pay attention when the knocking is quiet. The knocking gets louder, and then our house will collapse, as it were.
It's funny that you say that, because Jessica and I both got sick last month after recovering from her second miscarriage. We both kind of collapsed everywhere afterwards. The immune systems went down. We started to come back. I got bit by a tick 10 days ago today and spent 9 days with what's called recurring tick fever. It's not Lyme disease. It's not an East Coast thing, thankfully. And then Jessica's mom comes to visit here and help us out and gets gets pneumonia the first day she arrives, and she's getting better now. And you look at these things and you go, spiritual significance. We are going to listen and get off of the gas. Maybe you can tell us, either Jason Fried in Basecamp or Anna Coote, tell us about some of the things you've learned about the importance of getting off of the gas.
Yeah, so Jason Fried at Basecamp is really looking at a reduced hour schedule,
Yeah.
but cyclically, seasonally. So looking at, well, maybe if we allow our employees to take their foot off the gas when the sun is shining, when they want to be outside, during those summer months, then maybe what would happen is we would find that there's more productivity. Of course, that is absolutely what he has found. Also, all of Sweden is moving towards a 30-hour work week because the data shows, and this was reported in the Harvard Business Review, that none of us, even top performing athletes, musicians, novelists, none of us can focus and do really good work for more than 4 to 5 hours a day. So this 40-hour work week, as you said, is based on the industrial age. It's not based on humans, it's based on machines, and it's not driven by the evidence. But when we reduce the amount of time that we are sitting trying to get work done, and we minimize distractions like social media and meetings, we get just as much done in less time, and we reduce workplace drama and absenteeism. So overall, the productivity actually increases, and we don't waste all this time and energy trying to fix human resources issues and all that stuff that comes up. We should just be going home earlier, and then it would fix it.
Woohoo! So I'm reading your book this morning, and an article pops up that really saddened me, but it actually brought home a big part of your book, which is I was a professional cyclist for many years. I raced in Europe. There was an athlete in, I think, 1985. She won her first medal. She became a world champion, Rebecca Twigg, one of the most famous U.S. cyclists ever. She was totally a hero of mine growing up. And there's an article about her being homeless now in the Seattle area after being an Olympic silver medalist, a many-time world champion, one of the winningest cyclists ever. And it got to chapter 2, you're worth your cycles and your momentum, and living in a society that only values the masculine conquer. So when she was no longer conquering, I believe, my guess is, her house fell down because she didn't know how to go to that nurturing side of things that's kind of lost or forgotten in this society.
Wow. That's a very sad story.
So I'm hopeful, since this is the second article that came out on her recently, I'm hopeful that people will find a way to work with her, help get her going. Maybe switching from there, maybe you can tell us about, we hear about the masculine, but I don't think we fully get it. Masculine traits versus feminine traits, and what's going on today.
So each of us has the masculine and the feminine within us. Some of us lead more with the masculine or more with the feminine, but it doesn't matter your gender expression. This is within all of us. This is just a duality that makes the world turn. I mean, not really, but it doesn't. It has nothing to do with gravity that I know of. But basically, the more masculine traits are there. It's linear. It's forward motion. It's about progress. It's direct. It's like an arrow about results and logic and getting things done. The feminine is more receptive, more experiential, process-oriented as opposed to progress-oriented, more based on a feeling of being as opposed to what you are doing. It's more cyclical and more inward energy, and the masculine is more outward energy. I mean, if you just look at the female or male genitalia, like that's kind of all you need to think about in order to get sort of the metaphorical energetics of how these two energies are. And so in general, because we live in a patriarchy, the masculine traits have been more celebrated as the good, and then the feminine traits have been not celebrated. And so what's so important at this time is that we all are celebrating the masculine in ourselves and then also ramping up the feminine traits, because so much healing occurs in our physical bodies, but also in relationships and society when we are able to get a little bit more into process, more into receptivity, more into listening, turning within for those answers, and not always being obsessed with doing, but also being really tuned into being.
So I'm thinking back, I had mentioned this on another interview recently. One of my best men at my wedding had said, dude, you were nowhere without her, meaning about my wife. It's not just behind any great man is a woman, but what we find is I think the best come out of people when there is more of a balance rather than a young conquer. We can actually step back, look big picture, and understand what in the world are we doing.
Yeah, I think that's so true, right? Because there's high traits and low traits of both the masculine and the feminine. And the some of the lower traits of the masculine can be action without purpose, busyness just for the
Yes.
point of being busy, without that pause to say, what are we doing this for? And that's where, and I think it's really beautiful in partnership how one might embody the masculine, sometimes one might embody the feminine, sometimes that shifts within relationships in different areas of your life. And it's so true. Like we think about it in our company all the time. How can we create those masculine structures to keep everything organized and contained so that we can flow within it, within our creativity and the experience and being really good at listening for what's needed. So they're both really necessary. And I think that, if you sway too far into the feminine, honestly, nothing gets done and there's a lot of stasis. So neither one is good or bad, but it's just about honoring both. And in general, our culture has been far too swung towards the pendulum of the masculine.
Yeah. And I'm excited, like I said, reading even the cycling article earlier today, because it drove me to looking at some top women cyclists over the not centuries, over the decades. And there's a shift. There's a shift to more of a heart-centered beingness. I mean, you can see it. Watch any movie where gender is, the lines are blurring now because
Yeah.
nothing is clear in black and white, and we are cracking open, I believe, as a society.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so true.
So let's go from there. Let's talk about the phases, the 4 phases of a woman's cycle, which I did challenge you off air a little bit. And I said, wait a second, I'm not buying this is just for women. I said, women may be the forerunners of this. And we get to take our cues from women, but this is for everybody, I'm convinced.
This is for everybody, and I'll tell you why. And I love that you get this because I have been interviewed by a variety of men with this book launch and a variety of women who really have been afraid to talk about it. So I'm grateful that you're excited to talk about it. So there are really these four energetic signatures, if you will, that really run the planet and run the cosmos, and they happen to be perfectly mimicked by the 4 seasons, which we're all familiar with, the 4 phases of the moon, and the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So these 4 energetic signatures are actually responsible for human life, for gravity, and for all of life on planet Earth. So this is not woo-woo. This is scientific. And when I was studying this, and I'll tell you what the 4 energetic signatures are and how they all line up. But when I began to study this, I thought, well, it's not, I think it's a freaking miracle that these exact same 4 phases are in the woman's body with the moon, with the 4 seasons. I mean, this is not a mistake. And I think if we're not paying attention to this on a daily basis in our lives, we are missing out on some major power that is literally the heartbeat of planet Earth, of humankind, and of the cosmos. So they are, they line up. So there's the winter season. It's the same as the new moon energy, the dark of the moon. It's the same as the menstrual part of a woman's cycle when she's actually having her period. Yeah. That is a time of inward energy. It's a time of deep intuition, getting really clear messages from, our inner guidance or whatever practice you have. Then there's the springtime. The springtime is the same energy as the waxing moon, as the moon is getting bigger. It's not actually getting bigger, it's just getting lighter in the sky. And then also the follicular phase of a woman's cycle. So that's the time the week after her period. It's a time of new beginnings. It's a time of brainstorming, of planning, of initiating. We know what springtime is like, right? Like it's just things are blooming, the babies are being born. Then there's the summertime energetic signature. This is the same as the full moon energy and the same as ovulation in a woman's cycle. It is full total receptivity. It's peak magnetism. It's full bloom. it's being able to really like attract what we want on a very powerful level, energetically and literally. It's the time to get pregnant, literally, but also metaphorically speaking. Then there's the autumn of the cycles, and the autumn is the same as the waning moon, as the moon moves from full back to dark. So, and also this is the luteal phase of a woman's cycle. The luteal phase is actually longer than the other three phases, because hormonally women at this time are primed to finish up projects and kind of complete what they started. And we all know it just takes longer to finish what you started than it does to start it. And our bodies are divinely orchestrated to give us the energetic power over 10 days-ish to do that. And that phase is about wrapping things up. It's about completion. It's about bringing things to a close, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and essentially wrapping up that particular cycle and phase.
So let's dive more into these phases, and let's talk about, you have experiments, brilliant experiments. I believe it's 14 of them through the book or coming later in the book. And experiment number 1 is really understanding where you are, which phase you're at, because I believe we all get lost, like checking the calendar. Well, is today actually a full moon? What does that mean? Because I've been feeling a little bit, we are different, unhinged. The energies are super strong today. If we understand this, it makes a huge difference if we know where we are in the cycle.
I have found this to be true, and the women I work with have found this to be true, and the men who have taken this on have found this to be true. And that's because we waste so much time and energy thinking we should feel a different way than we actually feel. But if we would tap into the cyclical nature of the way our bodies interact with our menstrual cycle or the moon, or, other people might have other cycles going on. Don't let me be the judge, the boss of you and your cycles. So I recommend taking 90 days and tracking how you feel to notice when these 4 energetic signatures come up for you, and basically your seasonal experience of a 28-day-ish cycle of time. Because then what will happen is you'll better be able to predict how you're going to feel at a certain time. And not only can you plan your life around it to some degree, more importantly, you can give yourself grace and space to feel how you feel when you feel that way, and to know that if you embrace these 4 energetic phases, you have all the ingredients you need every single month to get everything done that needs to get done, but not in a daily basis, right? Our world assumes that we're supposed to feel the same every single day, and ideally more energized and more productive than the day before. But it's a longer game than that, right? So we have the energy, we have the wiring to get it all done, but more in chunks over a month, as opposed to feeling the same way every day. And that's why I've always struggled with a morning ritual or doing the same exact thing every day, because I feel quite different one week over the next week. And so does every other woman, for sure. And quite frankly, probably men, as you're expressing.
Yeah, when I coach people, I tell them life is a sine curve. It's continuously cycling, and you can actually think of it as going around a mountain and continuously spiraling upwards. What's interesting watching you talk, Kate, is you're continuously moving in circles. Cyclical, and that's not by accident, because that's really what we're talking about here. Is if you understand the cyclical nature of things, you no longer feel like, I got to get things done, I got to get it done by the end of today, I got to get it.
Yeah, because here's the thing, I am really about conserving energy. Mm-hmm. And the spinning out about what we should be doing that we're not doing is a massive waste of energy. So instead, tuning into knowing where you are in your cycle. First of all, I find it just very grounding and comforting to know I'm a cyclical being and to track it, because it makes me feel held. by something greater than myself. And then I can plan for things. And as I told you, I'm a recovering control freak. So I like to have things that are predictable. So it's not like I'm controlling my body, but I'm listening to my body, and then I can control my response to what's happening, and give myself permission to feel low energy on one day, and then another day or another week feel really high energy and want to work more than I might usually, and go with that, as opposed to then judging myself for not wanting to go to bed early or whatever.
So going into the control freak side of things, you learned something very powerful, I believe October 2013, when you said you went into a fertile void, which I think we all have to give ourselves permission to go into now and again.
Yeah, so my first book, Money, a Love Story, came out in September of 2013. And after the book launch, cycle was kind of coming to a close, we were coming into the autumn of that particular cycle, and the autumn literally. I found that I didn't have anything else really. My creative fires had sort of burned out. I was really tired. I didn't have much else to say on the topic of money, though of course I do now because it's 6 years later. But at the time, my publisher wanted another book because the first book had sold really well,
Yep.
and I'm so grateful for that. And I didn't want to be somebody who just wrote another book about the same thing and just essentially titled it differently. Because I think we have enough of that in the world. And
Yes, they get pitched to come on the show.
I'm really about, I don't really believe there's any such thing as a totally original thought, but I'm really about integrity of creativity. And so, but I had a lot of judgment about this. I felt like all my friends who were publishing books at the same time were doing their next thing. They were doing programs, they were doing speaking, they were doing things that seemed like they knew what they were doing. And I felt like I did not know what I was doing and that I sucked. And it wasn't until October of 2016 that I began to, so 3 years later, I started studying the cycles and the seasons of my body and of the cosmos and of the planet, because my period came back after having my first daughter. And it had been a very long time since I had had it regularly, because I got really, really fit, slightly in a disordered way for my wedding. I lost my period, and then I had it one time, and then I got pregnant. And then by the time the pregnancy and nursing, whatever, it had been like almost 3 years. So it came back, and with it came for the first time this reverence of like, wow, my body, I felt like my body had returned to itself after nourishing this baby. And I was excited about it for the first time. And I got clear about these cycles and seasons. And I thought, well, if this happens inside my body every month, if this happens with the moon every month, if this happens on planet Earth every year, then most certainly in my career, it makes sense that I would have a winter time and I called it a fertile void, which I'm not the first person to call things fertile voids, but I loved the term. I called it a fertile void. And I knew, every year, I live in Maine, we have a very distinct winter. I don't ever worry if springtime is coming. And I felt like that whole 3 years, I spent a lot of time worrying if I was ever going to have a good idea again. And then inevitably, of course, springtime came, because it always does. But just like in Maine, we wish springtime would come earlier. I wished it had come earlier, but it just takes as long as it takes.
So let's go from there, and let's talk about backing off and allowing things to come to us. What's egg wisdom?
So egg wisdom is a term coined by my mom, Christiane Northrup. I asked her if I could write a chapter on it in the book, because it's so powerful with the way our biology wires us to be able to metaphorically attract things. And she was like, oh my gosh, I would love for you to write a chapter on this, because she wants more women to know as well. So how it works is every month for a woman in her reproductive years, she has an egg come out of her ovaries. That's called ovulation. And apparently maybe it's more than one egg, but anyway, let's just pretend it's one for the purposes of this. It's a metaphor, not a biology class. And so what happens is the egg comes out and the egg emits this signal, and the signal actually goes out and it tells the sperm where she is. And that signal has the ability to speed up the rate at which the sperm are swimming towards her. So she's very clear on her desire, and she puts out a clear signal, and she stays where she is. So she puts out a signal, but she's not running all over the place looking for the sperm.
Yep.
She stays where she is to attract the sperm. Then when the sperm all comes swimming wildly, she actually decides which one she's going to let in. So she is the gatekeeper to say, I want this, not that. She's very discerning. And if the sperm comes in and the sperm has something wrong with it, she actually has the ability to repair the sperm's DNA. So the egg can repair the sperm's DNA so she can improve upon her desire and she can egg it on, as my mom says, right? As the feminine, that is what the feminine does. The feminine makes things more beautiful. The feminine makes things more comfortable. The feminine eggs things on and always brings a snack. The egg has the ability to also nourish herself and the sperm as they take their journey down the fallopian tubes, down to embed in the uterine lining, where that then becomes the source of nutrients. And so she sits still. She emits a very clear signal so her desire can find her. She chooses what to allow in. She has excellent boundaries. She has the ability to improve upon her desire to egg it on, and she brings a picnic. And so this is egg wisdom. This is allowing ourselves to want what we want with fervor, but not to run all over kingdom come trying to make it happen. And so it's a metaphor, right? And so often I think, especially in the spiritual conversation, personal growth world, talking about the law of attraction, there's this idea that we have to obsessively visualize about things and make the vision boards and watch our thoughts like a hawk and only speak in positive. It's like a lot of things we're supposed to be doing. And those are all wonderful things. I love doing some of those things sometimes, but I think that we can become a little overly active in our attraction process. And I like to remember that I'm wired to be the egg. And I think men have this ability too, because we're all the masculine and feminine, to allow our desire to come swimming feverishly towards us and not have to work so hard to make it happen.
I like it. We teach people automatic writing, a process of journaling each morning in meditation, letting the words come to you. And for the last few months, I just keep hearing, relax, it's all coming, relax, it's all coming. In other words, do not try to grab the reins and drive the ship. What do you tell, as you call them, over-functioning people who come to you in this doer craze that we're all guilty of at a time?
Yeah, I think it's a really great time if you're feeling over functioning, if you're feeling anxious about your desires, if you're feeling clingy, right? Like white knuckling your desires, desperation. I would recommend taking a minute and listing out the things, the good things that have happened in your life without you having to orchestrate them. Just as a reminder that you can be the egg.
Yeah, because if you do that inventory, it's something I've given people as well, you find out you probably were in charge of none of them.
None of them. I mean, the best things in my life, I've had like this little hunch and I've kind of done one tiny little thing. And then it was this wild success versus the things I have strong arms then, and squeeze the life out of often don't come to fruition.
From there, maybe you can tell us real briefly, we talked a little bit earlier about tracking your cycle on the moon. What's the daily energy tracker?
Oh, the daily energy tracker is what I created so that you can use it for 90 days as a way to track your energy in relationship to where you are in your cycle, in relationship to where the moon is in its cycle. I like to use those as guideposts. Otherwise, we're kind of swimming in no man's land and we don't know where we are. So either the moon or the menstrual cycle or both. I like to track with both. And so it just asks you a few quick questions every day. I fill it out before bed when I decide to do a new 90-day tracking segment to get to know myself better energetically. And then you'll have this blueprint for yourself from a 90-day experience. And then you'll know on day 20 of my cycle, I really don't feel like talking to anybody. Good to know. So maybe that's a day to not schedule yourself back to back with calls. And then you can just set yourself up for success.
I like that. And I like when that day comes when you're going, I feel like hiding under the bed today. I feel like doing whatever. No judgment. You can say, this is just part of the natural cycle. I'm going to respect this. I'm going to love myself up right now, no matter what.
Yeah. And to also know that when you fully go into the rest or the inward time, next time around, when you're coming into springtime and summertime, your buds and your blooms will be that much more powerful, because the deeper we go, the higher we can then fly.
Thank you. It makes me think I did years ago a bike ride across the country, this huge solo endeavor. If I didn't get to my destination by a certain time at night, I would tear myself apart. I called it the shred zone. Maximum damage and minimum miles, trying to get those last few miles in. And I think that's what we're talking about here. When it's time to go inward and you instead try to extract at those points, you're shredding yourself, which you have to pay for later on.
Very well said.
So let's avoid the shred zone. Okay, from there, a couple experiments I want to talk about real briefly here. How do we discover what really matters most to us?
Well, I think it's really important to ask yourself, like, what if nothing else happened, if you had a very simple exercise, if you had 6 months to live, what would you be doing with your time? Who would you be spending your time with? What would you prioritize? That's what matters to you. And then what we need to do is we need to look at our actual schedules and line up our time, or just match your hours with the things that you say matter to you. And then you'll get more of what matters to you in your life. And then the things that don't matter will just fall away naturally.
You have a great quote here that I love. Energy saved is always time saved.
That is a good quote.
I think that's from you.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Kate?
Okay, so energy saved is always time saved, because I do believe we only have so much energy. While we can replenish it, and while there are ways to cultivate our energy, certainly if you've read anything about the people who study the decision fatigue, that we only have the capacity to make really so many good decisions throughout the day. I think about energy in the same way. And that's why so many people are stuffing their faces with chocolate at the end of the day, because they've run out of good decisions. And so with our energy, if we are very careful about where we devote our energy, we save it for the things that really matter, which then means that we get things done more quickly because we're more focused. We don't create drama because we're screwing things up, or we're, being hyper reactive or things like that. So I just see that anytime that we save energy, we automatically save time, because we get things done more powerfully and more efficiently.
Beautiful. Let's go from there. Let's talk about both listening to the body, checking your vitals, and Kettle Brand sea salt potato chips.
So listening to your body is really the process of when you get a signal from your body. It literally could be that you have to pee, that you're thirsty, that you need to move your leg because it's falling asleep, or it could be as, more powerful, like, oh, I need sunshine, I need fresh air, or I'm having this feeling in my gut that this relationship isn't working out, that we actually listen to those things. I mean, it seems very obvious, but there are so many times most of us have been talked out of what we know. Just from the point of, even when you fall down as a kid and your parent scoops you up and you're crying and they say, you're okay, but it's very clear that you're not okay. So there's so much invalidation that goes on, and we lose that connection with our body. So it's really important to listen to your body, because it will save you so much time. I think about the times when I knew I shouldn't do something because I was having a gut instinct that I shouldn't, but then I went and did it anyway. All of the time wasted, and then the time unraveling that relationship or whatever. So if we listen the first time around, it really keeps us on track, and it's this internal guidance system, so we don't have to worry about, are we making the right decision or not? Your body will tell you.
Very, very good. And one that I don't know if we almost all ignore, but I believe almost all of us can do better on, which is receiving help, asking for assistance.
This is huge. It's something that we all struggle with, for sure. And because this idea of I can do anything myself is worn like a badge of honor, that somehow being able to do everything and not needing help makes you a more valuable person. It does not. It just makes you lonely and tired. And no one's giving awards. No one at the end of their life is wishing that they had done more things by themselves. I guarantee that. And so we all need each other. We need that feeling of connection. It's our well-being depends on it, and asking for help, and then also being available to others when they ask for help, is one of the surest ways to create community and to create that deep sense of fulfillment that we all crave and need.
Woohoo! On that note, what would be the top 3 tips you would give people for doing less?
Number 1, take a break when you're tired or go to sleep when you're tired.
Yep.
Number 2, very simple, but often overlooked. Number 2, track your energy cyclically and begin to honor what you actually feel like on any given day. That would be another one. And then the third one is to ask yourself, apply the do less filter, which is there a way that I could get the same result that I'm looking for with fewer steps in a more simple way or in an easier way? So really practicing just applying the do less filter to literally everything.
Simplify, simplify, simplify. I love it. What advice would you give, Kate? This is one Jessica, my wife, always wants me to ask. Advice for parents to help their kids with this.
To do it yourself. The best way to help our kids with anything is to commit to doing it and being it and living it ourselves. They watch us, they don't listen to us.
Amen. On that note, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
My relationships, being with my kids, dancing in the living room, being with my husband, laughing, spending time with girlfriends, just deep connection.
Very, very cool. Where can people go to find out more, to find your tracker, and to find your beautiful book?
So head over to katenorthrup.com/book. And when you go there, you'll see that you'll get some wonderful gifts and workshops as a bonus with the book. You can get the book wherever books are sold, but then go over to katenorthrup.com/book to grab all of the gifts for you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And I've got to ask, would you be up? Do you feel like a challenge today of a little short guided meditation?
Sure. I'll give it a go.
All right. So before we do that, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people before you put them in La La Land?
Yes. Remember that your worth is who you are, not what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you repeat that one more time for people to really let that sink in?
Your worth is who you are, not what you do.
Woohoo! All right. Thank you so much, Kate. We're up for a beautiful little meditation. If you're driving down the road, let's do this. Either pull off the car or let's do this later on.
So closing your eyes, taking a deep breath into your belly. Letting it out through your nose. Another inhale. And exhale. Feeling your seat in your chair or on the ground. Feeling the weight of your pelvis and the way that the ground supports you. Now, whatever visual you can bring to mind that represents to you what you have to do, what you need to do, whether it's today, this week, this month, bring it just in front of you. And as you look at it, as you continue to breathe at your own pace, at your own rhythm, look at that list and allow it to disintegrate, to move into a different form so that it is essentially dematerializing. And what replaces it is a visual. It could be a symbol, it could be a picture of yourself, but whatever is a representation of who you are. So just allow whatever picture you get. It could be a moment in time from a past time where you really felt the truth of who you are. It could be a symbolic thing. And let that picture be in front of you, seeing it, feeling that come into your body, that feeling of who you truly are that's replaced the to-dos. And now let that image, let that symbol that's out in front of you see it move towards you slowly and embed right into your heart. And breathe it in, inhaling. Exhaling. 2 more breaths, inhaling. Exhaling. 1 final inhale. Exhaling. And bring yourself back to the room, feeling your seat, letting your eyes flutter open and remembering, feeling within your heart who you truly are.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. This has been so much fun today. I'm going to recommend everybody to go out and get your book. And I think, like I said, this is as much for guys as it is for girls. I think if we learn to connect more with the natural cycles, there's no way we could be disconnected even if we tried, but if we learn how to connect, life would be so much easier, so much grander. We would have so much more energy. And then if we want to go out and produce and produce and produce, we can still do that as well, but without going into the shred zone.
Totally.
So thank you so, so much, Kate.
Thank you.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, do less, and begin regaining your life today and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. That was great.
Yay!
What a fun interview. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!